Hello. Today we're talking about gardens in the Bible, which appear right from the beginning right up to the end. And of course the first story that appears is in Genesis chapter 3, which is often told as being about Adam and Eve, although if you actually read the passage, it just says about the man and the woman rather than named people. And it's where God tells them not to eat fruit from a particular tree within the garden. But then a snake comes and tempts the woman to eat the fruit from the tree. And she does so, and she then gets her husband to eat the fruit as well. And because they've gone against what God has commanded, their relationship with God is broken, and they are no longer, they are thrown out of the garden. And I think the whole point of the idea of sin, of disobeying God, is more not because God wants us to do particular things, but he wants us to do things that are good for us and right for us, and that help us to have a good relationship with him. And quite often temptation is about that relationship with him being broken and destroyed in some way. And there's a verse at the end of the story that says how the son of the woman will step on the serpent's head, the serpent being representative of the devil, who tempts us and tries to lead us astray from God. And that's the first pointer to what God's plan is of redemption and of bringing us back to God. And the whole of the rest of the Old Testament, the time before Jesus came, points towards how people continually go against God and go have their relationship with him destroyed through what they do. But also throughout the Old Testament there are aspects of God's plan to bring people back to God revealed, and they all point towards Jesus. And when we get to the Gospels, there are gardens that crop up there as well. On the night of the Last Supper, before the first Good Friday, Jesus and his disciples went to the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, the word Gethsemane means an olive press. You know, in a vineyard you might have a vine press where you press grapes to make wine. And an olive press is you would have where there are olive trees where you press olives to make olive oil. And it was on the Mount of Olives, so there are no points for guessing what type of trees there were in this garden. No, this was the night before, when Jesus was going to pay the price for the bad things that we were going to do. And he spent time there praying, and we can see that actually he didn't really want to go through with it. There was a temptation there not to do what would bring us back to God, but in praying he actually helps himself to resist that temptation to give up and not to go through with it. So actually he resisted the temptation that the man and the woman in the Garden of Eden hadn't resisted. Then on the next day he was died on the cross. And there are several references in the New Testament to Jesus dying on a tree. Quite often the word tree and the word cross could take each other's place. And whereas in the Garden of Eden the tree was the downfall, Here, it leads to people being brought back to God. And in the account of the first Easter day, in John's Gospel, John chapter 20, Mary Magdalene was the first person to see Jesus when he'd risen from the dead. And at first she didn't recognise him because she wasn't expecting to see him, and she thought he was the gardener. Now, if she thought he was a gardener, it must mean that the place where he was buried was in a garden. So actually, the story of resurrection and Jesus coming back to life and restoring us to life also takes place in a garden. And there's one other reference that appears at the end of the Bible, at the end of Revelation, where there's a tree of life, and that sort of, so you have a tree at the start of the Bible, but also in the new heaven and the new earth that is described at the end of Revelation, there's a tree there as well, and that's what we have to hope for in the next life of life with God in all its fullness. Thank you.